You're listening to the Empowered Divorce Podcast, where you practice being the chooser in your life again, one day at a time. Thanks for joining me. Hello, my amazing, beautiful listeners. How are you? Thank you for joining me today. And sincerely, thank you for helping the podcast grow. Those of you that have hit the follow button, that have left a review, it really does help expand the reach to other women that are looking for that support, that are looking for a language that actually fits their unique experience. So if you haven't yet hit the follow, leave a review. I would love it if you took a quick second to do that. I also wanted to give a quick reminder for those of you that missed January's Dating from Within workshop. I've had a couple of you reach out and ask when the next one is. The date has not been set yet. However, if you go to amiewoolsey.com, go to the Dating Within workshop, put your email address in there. When the date is announced, you will get an email informing you of when that next workshop is available. So join the interest list and get informed when the next workshop happens. Now, for the topic today, I don't think I've done a full episode on this topic. And if I haven't, it is long overdue. I'm approaching this not only from my own experience with self-objectification and becoming more aware of how often I used to do that and working through that, but also what I have seen in hundreds and hundreds of women that I've worked with over the years and the impact that sexualization, dehumanization, and objectification in their relationship has had on themselves. Because we live in a hypersexualized culture that teaches, I was going to say women, but really from the time that we're young girls, teaching girls that our value is tied up in how we look and how we are experienced by other people through the lens of others. And over time, a lot of girls turned into women start to relate to themselves from that outside observer view. Like you're living your life. It's like you're living your life while also watching yourself live your life, if that makes sense. And so I want to hold space for those of you that grew up with sexual abuse. Some of you grew up with pornography exposure very early, exposure to sexuality that your young developing brain was not ready for. Some of you grew up in purity culture. Some of you grew up with parental betrayal. One parent betray another in a sexually acting out way. Some of you weren't sexually active at all, but wanted to be that quote hot girl, wanted to have that kind of attention, believing that if you did, then you were somehow desirable enough, lovable. All of that, in all of those different experiences and then some, we still learned self-objectification. So whatever your story is, if you've ever felt like you now evaluate yourself more than you experience yourself, then this episode is for you. Self-objectification is when you experience yourself as something to be looked at instead of someone to be lived from. When my body became a project and instead of a safe place, instead of a place that felt comfortable and breathable and lived in, it became a project, something to make better, something to make more of or less in some form or fashion. I think there is a difference between being aware of your body and being in self-objectification. When I think about healthy self-awareness, I'm noticing my body. There's a level of, you know how I love that word interesting. There's a level of neutrality that comes with self-awareness. I'm not judging, I'm not shaming. I'm staying curious. That beautiful characteristic that we all come with, curiosity. So a healthy self-awareness is being curious about the body and the experience that we are having with and in our body. Self-objectification, I see more as a monitoring the body for how it might be judged again by the others through the lens of others. A lot of us are living in that space without even realizing it. And just for a second, even as you're listening to me right now, just place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly and just take a slow breath and just let your belly soften on purpose. I would imagine a lot of you might not realize the bracing, the tightening that might be happening in your belly. If you feel that bracing, just send a signal to the belly to release. You might feel your body sink a little bit deeper into the ground or into the chair that you're sitting in. Allow yourself to take up space, the space that you're taking up in the chair, in the car, feeling your feet on the floor, deepening into the ground. This moment right here alone is a micro practice of coming back to you, coming back to your humanity, which is really what I want to talk about today. I was recently watching the Elizabeth Smart documentary that just came out. I remember following her story really closely back in 2002. I had two very young daughters at the time, and it was just heartbreaking to imagine what those parents were going through. Listening to her tell her story now as a grown woman, I watched her tell her story with my own totally different perspective. In 2002, I was still married to my first husband. There was still a lot of those behaviors that were being hidden. My understanding and language to abuse in general, but to sexual acting out, objectification, self objectification, addiction, sexual addiction, pornography addiction, all of that was just still so very, very foreign, not part of my vocabulary at all. One of the things that she talked about is the sexual abuse that she experienced as a 14-year-old girl, and how, because of her religious upbringing and that cultural view, family of origin view around sex and sexuality, she talks about how she felt like her worth, her value, her humanity was just gone now because of what this man stole and took from her. But she didn't see it that way. She said that she wasn't taught the difference between consent in a relationship versus rape. So she didn't know, really, again, have a language to what had just happened to her. And that really hit me, because whether, again, we grow up in a hypersexualized culture or we grow up in a highly shamed based narrative around sex where we don't talk about it, touch it, think it, experience it at all, we are still often taught to relate to sexuality from this outside in view or perspective, being told what that is, viewing ourself from, again, the lens of others, even if it's the others that we look up to in religion, in family, becomes something that happens to us, something that determines our value. If we're desired sexually, we must be valued more. If not, less. Or if it's taken, abused, worth even less, perhaps. Whether we are seen as sexual or not becomes the thing that we measure ourselves by. Again, some of us from very, very early age. So those of you that maybe felt more valuable when you were viewed as desirable, maybe some of you felt bad, wrong, unsafe, or dirty when you were viewed that way. For me, I relate to how Elizabeth grew up a lot. I grew up with a lot of sexual shame and body shaming, and also this responsibility that I felt placed on me to manage how I looked, how I dressed and acted, so that the boys and young men and even men wouldn't lust or wouldn't act out or wouldn't, quote, struggle because of my body, however my body was. In fact, I remember one day I was wearing a purse across my body, that strap across my chest. And a woman in my church congregation came up to me and told me that I needed to take it off and put it around my shoulder, because it was bringing too much attention to my breast. And she said it just wasn't right to do that to the boys. This was a woman that I would have considered a leader, someone that I had looked up to in my religion. Immediately, the shame that I felt was so real. I can I can put myself back there pretty easily, even today, all these years later. What happened in that moment, I remember my thoughts, my attention went straight to self-objectification mode. I started to scan the room and view the room, who was looking at me, putting myself in the body of others, really these boys. What were they thinking? And men, which was ew. What were they thinking about me? How were they viewing me, my body, my breasts? Already so insecure as a growing teenager about my body. So the confusion that came with that comment and so many other messages like that created this warped relationship with my own body and my own sexuality. Because if boys noticed me or were attracted to me, I had to reconcile that it was somehow because I was bringing it on in a bad, naughty way. Then there was this part of me that also, as a young teenage girl, wanted to feel attracted, wanted to feel beautiful, wanted to be noticed, wanted to have that as part of my experience in my growing, normal growing sexuality as well. So a lot of confusion there, right? That wasn't really talked about, right? It felt good to be noticed and sexuality felt good. So the absolute confusion was so damaging. It left me living outside of myself in all of those ways. I was sexually abused in high school, and I did believe that it was my fault. When people found out, it, of course, was the girl's fault, my fault. I'm the quote, slut. I asked for it. Stories old as time, right? So for me, the way that I learned to monitor my body and survey how I looked while I was living wasn't even a choice at that point. It just became my normal. Feeling enough in all of those ways that we want to feel enough only when I looked acceptable or desirable outside in. I also remember extended family members telling me when I was a young teen that I should do more sit-ups like my cousin because it's not good to have flab on your stomach. It could just get worse. So I learned that my stomach wasn't acceptable. I even had a boyfriend in high school confirm that when he told me my stomach was too fat. The body shaming that so many of you like me grew up with was so normal in our world that of course our internal messaging was shame around our body. So over time, we lose connection with these internal cues. We lose the ability to listen to the body from that inside place because we're watching the body from outside in. It wasn't about what I felt. It was about how I looked, how I was perceived, how I was evaluated. Our sense of worth, lovability, value, and being chosen became tied to external things, even religious things. The way that we see ourselves is through that lens of others, and that is self objectification. Objectification is when a human becomes a thing, a tool, decoration, a symbol, something to be evaluated or consumed rather than known. And so self objectification is when you turn that same gaze upon yourself. You reduce your sense of self down to a body, your appearance, your sexual worth, and you start silencing the parts of you that feel uncomfortable, the parts of you that want to say no, the parts that freeze, the parts that know that something is off, something isn't right, but we don't speak. We don't speak up. You might be doing this if you're constantly adjusting yourself, adjusting your body position, even your clothes, fixing, sucking in, holding your breath, checking, scanning, comparing. If you walk into a room and you immediately wonder how you look to other people, if you're avoiding pictures or you're over analyzing pictures, how many of you take a group picture and then immediately want to look at it to zoom in on you, your body? And what we're doing in that moment oftentimes is viewing, how are other people going to view my body if that gets posted online, right? Those of you who are dating, how many of you can't even be present on that date because you're watching yourself through the eyes of that date? Or during sexual intimacy experiences, are you managing angles, managing your stomach, managing how you sound, managing how you are being experienced by the other versus being in your body experiencing the other? You're self-objectifying if your body feels more like something to present to people than something to live inside of. And if you only feel safe when you feel attractive to other people because they mention it, say it, talk about it, acknowledge it, you're self-objectifying. And I want to say this with so much compassion. If any of these resonate with you, or all of them, like I did, you learned that this is what being a human requires and a woman requires, but it comes at a cost. Many of you already are acknowledging that cost, and maybe some of you don't quite know to the extent of what this has been costing you, but it costs a lot. It pulls you out of reality, out of living, out of being present. You lose ease, ease in your ability to just merely exist. It creates anxiety, shame, perfectionism. You disconnect from hunger cues, fullness, fatigue, desire, intuition. And it makes us feel really, really unsafe in our bodies. Like it's always being evaluated by others, but also ourselves. And so it starts to create this internal relationship where you're constantly correcting, overcorrecting, undercorrecting yourself instead of caring for yourself. Over time, it becomes harder and harder to access what true self-esteem really is, because your worth starts to feel very conditional, like we're earning safety. And really, that's what's been happening all along for many of you for a very long time. And whatever your early life messages were for you, I know I shared some of mine. I wasn't really planning on sharing so many of mine, but it just feels like I know I'm not alone. Even if you don't share the exact same experience, maybe it did trigger your own. And I want to invite you to just sit with it, even if you have to push pause and reflect on how this maybe showed up for you in your life. Whatever your early life messages were for you, living in a world where pornography and sexual objectification is treated as normal has absolutely had consequences. Sexual addiction and compulsive sexual behavior more often than not involves objectification because it trains arousal around parts, novelty, control, consumption, and fantasy rather than mutuality and humanity. There is always an indication of a one down position, and the woman is in the one down position most of the time with the general consumption of pornography. It teaches often these young minds the distorted reality of sexual intimacy. It teaches dominance and entitlement. It teaches women that our bodies are what makes us lovable, desirable, sexual, enough. And a lot of the problematic sexual behavior is not about intimacy, it's about regulation, escape, power, again, entitlement, and the ability to keep someone as an object for their own self-consumption instead of relating to them as a full, whole person. It is very much a body. And this matters so much because when you have lived inside that system for so long, your brain and your body can start to believe that being a woman means being observed. And pornography does not teach healthy sex. Emily Nagoski, in her book, Come As You Are, which you have not read, highly recommend, says that learning sex from porn is like watching a Formula One race car race is a driving lesson. If this was the only education that you or your partner had on sex, it's no wonder why we have no idea what healthy is. I do recommend, if you want more information on the impact of pornography on love, and I would absolutely recommend this for those of you that have teenagers, go to fightthenewdrug.org. I highly recommend watching their documentary, Brain Heart World. It can be a really beautiful, safe way to open up the conversation. If those of you who are wondering how to talk to your child about pornography consumption, and really helping to teach that how it not only impacts a growing, developing brain, but how it impacts our view on ourself and love, on humanity and the consumption around bodies rather than viewing humanity in a healthy way. One of their slogans is people are not products, but this is what's being consumed. And statistics are so disheartening every year around pornography consumption, and pornography among women seeking out this is growing exponentially. In fact, statistics are right. At least the last I looked, 53% of boys and 39% of girls believe that pornography is an accurate description of sex. Those percentages are probably higher now, but it's leaving young, developing minds, especially women, viewing themselves in that experience through the external lens, knowing how to contort their bodies to be viewed in ways that is being deemed desirable. None of us need necessarily a dramatic story for self-objectification to take root either. I think sometimes it is that subtle learning that your body is always up for evaluation. If any of you are on social media, I almost guarantee that there are self-objectification patterns showing up that you might not even realize. But after sexual betrayal, whatever healthy sexuality we believed we had in our relationship, it blew up. And when you find that your partner was viewing other women or engaging with other women sexually, it created such a distortion of self, rightly so. And if we weren't already body shaming, sure are now, and if we weren't already comparing ourselves to others, we are now, and if we weren't believing that something is wrong with our body or the way that we experience sex, we are now. Sexual betrayal shatters everything in that arena. It reorganizes your perception of love, sex, body, worth, desirability, and how we assume others see us, including our partner who betrayed. And it can turn the whole world into scanning, threat detection, comparison, and that hypervigilance. Those of you whose partner betrayed you with other women, through screen or not, your nervous system is going to read women as danger for a while. That is that trauma association. When the body is threatened, the mind tries to create that control. One way control shows up is demoralizing or objectifying the category that feels really dangerous. So we judge other women for how they dress, because that might be a really dangerous category right now. Brain's going to assess that as a threat. Even if we're just walking through the store or across the street, it keeps seeing women as competing objects, not humans. And you seeing yourself through that same objectifying lens that already harmed you. Now, the point here or the goal is not convincing yourself that you're beautiful. Your goal is to become a person again, not a body first and a person second. And one of the turning points is using your body as an instrument, not an ornament. That quote comes from the book More Than a Body, another resource that I highly recommend. It's by Lexi and Lindsay Kite. It actually wasn't long after reading that book years ago, and they talk more about self-objectification in there. I was becoming more aware and trying to be more aware of how I was viewing myself through the lens of others. And so I had gone to a restaurant and they seated us in a booth. I sat down and immediately I scanned to my left because the wall was to my right. And so I sit down in the booth and I scan to my left and I see that there's a table with people seating in the direction like towards me. So like they were looking at me, my side view. So I dropped right into self-objectification because in that split second, I viewed myself, the side view of me through their eyes. So I sucked in my stomach, adjusted my pants, and sat up straight. And boom, there it is in like 0.5 seconds. So fast, so subtle. No one would ever know what I was doing in that moment, but I did because I was trying to be way more attentive to when I stepped outside of myself. And I started to tear up. And I just sat there feeling really sad for myself. Number one, sad how fast that happened, like so fast. Sad that it felt like second nature, that I had done this my entire life so easily, so quickly, so naturally. I was told that body part was not desirable. So, of course, I'm going to be scanning to see if other people might see that part of me that I've deemed undesirable, bad, wrong, disgusting. The internal source of safety was learned that I only feel safe if I feel attractive. That's not freedom. And I'm negotiating for safety through my appearance. We are not going to unsee what betrayal did, but we can learn to metabolize it and let it pass through us. And a part of that healing can be reclaiming your body as yours again. If shame and appearance and all of that fixation are the norm for you, you might not even notice you're doing it. So we stop moralizing it and we start noticing it. Because self-objectification has become your trauma strategy, right? It's the brain trying to create control, look right, and then I'll be safe, be desirable enough, and then I won't be replaced. The cheating won't happen again. If you make sure that you have sex better and more exotically or whatever that is, then maybe it won't happen again. If I can outcompete another woman, thinner, better, more attractive, then I won't be abandoned. I just want you to hear me. That's not vanity showing up in those moments. That is survival. That is your nervous system trying to prevent pain from ever happening again. But there is a path out. There is a path forward. And there is a path to healing. There is a path towards cultivating real, healthy self-esteem, self-love, and self-safety. So I want to try and make this really simple. One shift. Step one is just notice the shift. Start naming it. This is self-objectification. Quietly to yourself. We're just going to be in that observer mode. Oh, I just left my body. I just left my body and I turned myself into an image. I turned myself into consumption. I turned myself into something that is to be viewed by others. Step two is rehumanize. So rather than asking the question, how do I look? It's what am I needing right now? What am I needing right now in this moment? What am I feeling right now? What is my body asking for right now? Because again, the goal isn't to just try and view ourselves as prettier. The goal is to be a person again. Self objectification takes us out of being a person, seeing ourselves as a person, allowing ourselves to just be a person. So we need to rehumanize, see ourselves as a human again. Step 3 is inside out safety. This is where you build that internal source of safety that is not dependent on being attractive. And it can be really small at first. It can look like letting your stomach soften, even though the old reflex is to hold it in and brace. This was a huge one for me. The amount of bracing that I learned to have and hold in my stomach region. Like I said, it has, there's been a lot of grieving for just that part of my body alone, and the amount of bracing and armoring that it has held on to my entire life. So just sending that signal for that bracing to release. It can look like choosing comfort over presentation. What feels comfortable way to sit right now or to stand or to be, rather than putting on a presentation of how I should sit, stand, or be. It can look like eating when you're hungry, resting when you're tired, and moving your body when it feels good, not because we're supposed to or we've got to punish ourselves into a healthy body. This is where the you're never going to hate yourself into change comes in right here. Building that internal source of safety can look like setting boundaries around social media for yourself. When you notice that comparison spike up in your nervous system, when you are aware, oh, there it is. What is your boundary? What will you do? How will you create safety here inside from that inside out place? It can look like reducing body checking and mirror checking when you're dysregulated. And it can look like letting yourself be seen by safe people as a whole human being, not as a body to be evaluated. One of the coolest experiences I had was a couple of my dear friends. We all actually read this book, More Than a Body, and we were all working on this for ourselves. The majority of our interactions were online. And when we came together in person, it was really it was a really impactful moment because we each noticed our own automatic ways of responding to other women and how natural it is sometimes to think that this is a good thing, right? Oh, you look amazing. Oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. You're so skinny. You lost so much weight. All of those kind of comments, right? That might feel good and positive, and I'm not saying don't say it, and I am also saying don't say it. Here's why: because it is objectifying, because we are viewing a body rather than a whole person. When you can catch yourself and stop yourself from throwing those comments out there as ways to maybe make someone feel good or bring attention to something that we think they might want to hear about themselves. When you stop doing that and you actually see the whole person, you are going to be amazed at what that actually opens up in terms of allowing ourselves to be. Sometimes that's allowing ourselves to be uncomfortable and letting that be a human, normal experience, allowing the other person maybe to feel uncomfortable, which again, for me, that's not trying to rescue. Sometimes I noticed that I would make those comments because I was very aware and attuned to someone's lack of self-esteem and uncomfortability and insecurity. And so I would make those comments to try and fix that, make them feel better. But again, it's viewing the body, trying to fix and not allowing humanity on either side. It was really fascinating over the years that we have come together, and that is void of our conversations. It has strengthened the intimacy of our friendship. It has made space for our own individual humanity. And when we want to talk about our experience in our body, that's what it actually comes down to. I'm talking about my experience with my body in whatever way, and unless I am specifically asking for some kind of thought or feedback, it is not offered. And there's a holding, there's again an allowing, there's an attuning, there's a being seen without someone trying to solve, fix, placate, or again, view what I'm even saying as just a body. It's viewed so much more embodied, if that makes sense. I'm telling you, this is a incredible thing to practice for yourself first. Get your friends to buy into this and practice with you. And if you have children, this is the best gift you can give them. It has been really cool to even see this impact with my children, to not view them as a body and allow for more humanity in our interactions. The lack of humanity that we have in this world is frightening, not only due to the dehumanization around sexualization of everything that we have going on in the world, but just a dehumanization that we have that I think a lot of you are aware of that's going on right now. So the passion that I feel, the conviction that I feel to bring any sense of humanity back is so alive in me. If it starts with ourself, which I believe it does, I think this is a really important and an impactful way that we can start bringing humanity back into the world, is by bringing humanity back to ourselves. When you catch yourself in that observer mode, press your feet into the ground, wiggle your toes, slow your breath, ask, where am I holding this? In my jaw, my throat, my chest, my belly? Let all of those bracings soften just a little bit. Doesn't even have to be all the way, just a little bit. And say to yourself, I'm here. I've got me. I see it. I'm in my body. I belong to me. This is my safety right here. So this week, if you want to practice, stop trying to convince yourself that you're beautiful and force this self-esteem with all these affirmations. Yes, those can be powerful, but we got to go deeper. Come back to being present with you as you are holistically. Try to catch the moment that you leave your body and gently come back, because you are not an image. You are a person. You get to come back to your humanity. You get to create your human experience because you can. Take care, everybody.
I was born to fly and spread these wings and find my own. I am coming home. Today will be the day, it all will change. Nothing, no one's in my way. Today will be the day. I was made to dream that anything can be my own. I have found my home. Today will be the day, it all will change. Nothing, no one's in my way. Today will be the day.